Hi, my name is Matt Fernandez from Geeks of Color, and great to meet with y'all today.
Hi,
Hey
man.
Matt,
Good to meet you,
good to meet
Matt.
you.
So my first question is, there are so many coming of age stories, and we've recently seen a lot of Asian American stories, but it's so rare that these stories tackle from the perspective of first generation children. For specifically Sean and Isaac, what was it like exploring that kind of perspective in this story?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's the perspective that is just my perspective. It's a very personal perspective. I'm gonna write a personal story. It's impossible to write it from a different perspective. It would be weird to be like, this is a very personal story, and then it was like a blonde white kid or something. So it was, by writing this story and having it be inspired by my family, it was, I think, inherently going to be through like a first gen Asian American perspective.
As the first generation American perspective, I'd say that this story was pretty personal to Sean because it was a personal story. And I think it would be quite weird if this personal story was acted by a blonde white kid. So thank you. It was one of our most unserious answers yet.
I mean, I feel like it's keeping in how Chris would answer the question, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, for you, Joan, I mean, the story is focused primarily on Chris, but there's a lot of emotion in tackling like the loneliness and almost kind of like vilification that she feels when like coming from her mother-in-law or from like the other Asian people around her, the other immigrants, and from like her own kids. For both you and for Sean, what was it like delving into kind of that, even within the coming of age story, that underrepresented perspective? Like, because I feel like a lot of immigrant parents don't get a lot of recognition for how hard it is to do what they're doing.
it is so true what you have said. It is not easy. I mean, to have uprooted yourself, moving into a completely strange world and having left behind all your everything, friendship, love, tradition, language, everything, and to come here and raise American children. It is exceedingly difficult, and people often don't think about it. And I think I'm grateful that Sean has written a relationship of this immigrant mother, a single mother, basically. The father was completely absent.
Mhm.
And also the dynamic between the mother-in-law and the mother is also something very Asian. I think we that two generations, three generations living together. The character is stuck in the middle, just being this considered really bad daughter-in-law, inadequate daughter-in-law, and trying so hard to be a good mother, but really clueless sometimes because she simply doesn't know. She's unsure of the ground under her feet and the kind of confusion, but the fierce love comes through in the end. It's there. I love it because between Chris and mom, we never even said I love you. But in the end, the end scene that you feel it's there. It's definitely there. Yeah.
Mhm. I think the culture and technology of this movie is also something that's like very, very present. Like I was a year younger than Chris would have been in 2008 when the film takes place. What was it like to revisit that period of time? And I know, Chris, I think you were born a year before this movie. No, Chris, I'm Isaac. This the year before the movie takes place. So, what was it like to kind of go back to a time when cell phones and social media, which are so prevalent today, kind of take up the majority of how this film is kind of set?
Yeah, I think the funny thing that I've actually kind of just noticed today after doing all these interviews is that kids act a lot differently than they do now, than they did before, you know? But I think down at the core, there's still the same insecurity and there's still the same need to fit in and there's still the same like, oh wow, if I can't like be the cool kid, then like what's gonna happen to me? Or if I'm too weird, if I don't stand out, if anyone can even notice who I am. I think that's still like relevant today. And I think that's still something that's pretty commonly found in most teenagers. And the only difference is, as you said, is really the technology, and the media that we consume and the media that we put out. that's the only thing that's really changing our behaviors and how we talk and how we act, I guess. Thanks, Dad.
All right, well, thank you all so very much. I really loved watching the film. I loved like revisiting my own childhood. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
you.